The At Your Insta podcast is brought to you by Comic Town. Check them out at www.comictown.net or search for Comic Town Gaming Center on Facebook.
Hello, this is Morgan from At Your Instep. This episode I am not actually on, but as the editor of the show, I could do fancy things like put a little snippet like this in, so it counts. Thank you, and enjoy the episode. Bye.
Hello, and welcome to At Your Instep. I'm here with Dave.
Hi.
And Morgan.
Cricket.
Is this the first time he's missed an episode?
Yes. So yeah, this is episode 154, and also episode 1 without Morgan.
Good on him. He made a good run, because we've all missed. Well, you weren't even. Actually,
I wasn't even part of the original crew, but
I've definitely missed. And now he's on his honeymoon now. His hands will still be in this episode because while we're recording with his equipment, at least I hope we're recording right now with his equipment, he's still going to be editing the file for us. So we really come back, Morgan. We need you. So he's been sending me pictures all week though from Harry Potter World in Florida, and yeah, it's made for a great work week for me. Every time I open my phone, it's like, oh cool, another sweet picture. I'm just gonna go smash my head in the wall.
I haven't gotten any pictures, so
well, you know where the love is.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to try and do my best Morgan impersonation today. So we've got a great show for you today. We have a lot of community topics and competitive topics as well. We didn't really get to talk the Pro Tour, so we're not going to spend too much time on that because the metagame is already shifting from it, but we will mention that. So let's, I guess, dive right into this stack of community topics. First off, congratulations to Owen Turtenwald and Yuya Watanabe for being inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, this is obviously going back a couple of weeks, so we're going to try to catch up here. But yeah, I mean, I think these two guys are obviously very deserving, and I think it's pretty easy for them to be first ballot Hall of Famers. I got a chance to see during the Pro Tour coverage they showed the speeches that they did, and it was pretty cool. I think Owen seemed very grateful for the opportunity to be there, obviously, and I think like for somebody like him, like if you knew him, kind of a long time ago, or like when he was first coming up, he wasn't the most pleasant person, and maybe a little immature, but I think he's come a long way since then, and I think he's gone out of his way to be kind of a pillar of the community. So
his image was certainly helped by you Enter the Battlefield as well, and also by this. So hopefully he can spin that goodwill and remain the pillar.
I think like hanging out with Reed Duke also just rubs
just
off on you.
Nicer guy.
Yeah.
Yuya then also read his in English.
Yeah, he did his in English,
which is really impressive.
Yeah, it was definitely hard to understand, but they did put the subtitles in there so you could. But I mean that's pretty cool that he did that. I mean he didn't have to do that. And a lot of the Japanese pros that don't speak English very well, they have a translator that usually when they're doing the interviews and things like that. But he got up there and did it in English, and he wanted to make it clear that he's not quitting anytime soon. So I'm glad to hear that because he is one of my favorite pros to watch on the tour. So I'm glad to hear that he's going to continue to.
Yeah, I'd be sad if I didn't see his name in the top 8 of like every other GP. Like, oh, hey, where do you go? There's too many GPs without him in it.
Right.
Next up, we have Nate Holt and Sean Kornhauser. Now, they recently stopped doing Walking the Plains, which is sad. But they did say like new things were coming, and almost immediately we get a new project, which is Enter the Battlefield Roanoke. So I like continuing that title.
Right. So, as we just mentioned Enter the Battlefield, which was the documentary, and this is going to be kind of from what I could tell, it's going to be kind of a series of mini documentaries. So this one focused on BBD's run at the World Championship.
So this isn't about the colony that disappeared in the early 1600s?
No, this is not a historical.
I really thought they were just like really like pivoting and going.
They're just going way off.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm less excited, but no, they put out quality content, and
Yeah.
BBD's good people too, so it makes sense to sort of put the camera near him.
Yeah, I mean, it had the quality that you would expect from those guys, and kind of a more serious take. Walking the Plains was kind of a more, I think, tilted towards more casual crowd, and this was a little bit more serious. But yeah, it was focused on not only BBD but kind of all the guys down in Roanoke. You got Brad Nelson and Cedric Phillips and Tom Ross and all these guys that from the Star City circuit. So it was pretty cool, and I look forward to see what else they're gonna do. Like, what other stories are they gonna bring forward with this new platform that they have? So.
Yeah, I think they're really as long as they can keep going back and forth from personalities that are engaging, they're never going to stop finding storylines. So yeah, I'm excited with this too. I'm just glad they keep making Magic stuff because they've really, I think, reflected well upon us as a community. Where the community itself may not always do a great job reflecting upon itself, but they really have. I've talked to a number of people who they watch because they're just Netflix junkies and they're like, oh, I saw this Magic documentary on here and it was pretty great. It's like, yeah, it is actually. So it's nice.
Yep.
Let's move on. We're into Commander 2016 spoiler season. Now, we're not going to go into a ton of cards yet. We'll sort of, if we do any review of them, we'll wait for them all to be spoiled. I will say, this is the most excited I've been for. I've never bought a Commander set before, but there is definitely a 4-color Commander that is the voice of the Praetors from Phyrexia.
Yeah,
and it definitely has a rules text that says at the end of your turn, proliferate. And oh man. That one line of text is enough for me to be like, all right, I need to buy one of these.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. Without really getting into the specifics, like you said, they mentioned the Praetors from Phyrexia. We have some Theros block things coming back. I think a couple of the gods are getting reprinted. What else are they bringing in?
Specifically, I think the important one from Theros is the, and I'm going to try not to butcher the first name, but Kineos and Tiro of Meletis. And if you didn't know, these are the two, the two kings who are depicted on the Guardians of Meletis card, the artifact that's a 0/6. And pretty awesome. This is sort of that, Wizards branching out more into sort of non-binary representation, and it's really cool. If you look at this card, you can see the guardians, these statues that are on the 0/6 wall being built in the background.
Right.
Which, if you're a fan of that kind of fantasy, if you've watched you watched or read Lord of the Rings and you've seen that, or even more recently Game of Thrones with the Titan of Bravos, these sorts of things, I don't know, they're really cool.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, kind of bringing forth. They had a whole piece today on Daily MTG about the lore behind it. So this is kind of a lot of the background stuff that's happening, or they're kind of expanding these worlds that we've already seen.
Yeah,
before.
a lot of these are they're continuing their theme of trying to print things that didn't have cards. So last time we got a number of planeswalkers who never got cards, like Teferi and Freyalise and that sort of idea. Well, here we're getting a bunch of creatures. Some of them are still current, like Vial Smasher, which is the goblin that was friends with
Zergo?
No, yes, with Zergo, but also with I'm going to forget the planeswalker now. I'm sorry, Tarkir. Anyways, Sarkhan. Thank you. But then we have a couple we have Silas Wren, who is the Ethereum guy who beats Tezzeret in a duel when he's a kid. So that's kind of cool. By the way, these Ethereum creatures they have are terrifying. They've literally replaced almost all of their actual body with Ethereum, and I don't like it. And then we get the one that's a real throwback here is Cedar Kondo of Jamura. If you don't know, Jamura is
man, that's Mirage. Yeah.
Notice this legendary creature has flanking.
Yeah, that's sweet.
But this was the father of Volrath and the stepfather of Gerard Capuchin.
Oh.
Yeah. So this is a person who never got a card, but was definitely important in the lore. So I think they always do a good job of giving you that. And you got people like Ludwig finally getting a card.
I thought you were going to mention that one.
No, Ludwig's a terrible card.
Ludwig's test subject.
Out of all the flavor here that I really like, Ludwig is terrible because he's a necroalchemist who stitches bodies back to life.
But for some reason he's blue or red.
Yeah, he does nothing with that. His cards, so whatever. But so yeah, so they're doing a good job of just showing you snippets of planes and some creatures who are you may not know or have had a little bit of background, and I think they're doing a good job of that for Commander.
No, from a non Vorthos side, I always my ears kind of perk up during Commander sets, not because I play Commander, because I don't, but I'm always interested to see cards that could potentially be included in Cube. So I'm kind of looking at it through that lens. I'm not really hyped up about any of these 4-color, legendary creatures or anything like that. But anytime any of these kind of supplemental sets come out, I'm always like, oh, okay, any cool uncommons we got going on in there? There's been a couple that I've seen so far. So, looking forward to see the rest of it.
I have one more card I have to mention, and only because so people who know, like, I don't play Commander that often, but my one True Love Commander deck is a coin flip deck featuring Kark's Thumb.
You get the
boom pile.
The boom pile,
It's
yeah.
a 4-mana artifact. It says tap, flip a coin. If you win the flip, destroy all non-land permanents. Yes, get in my deck. Thank you. Thank you for the boom pile.
But then it's gonna kill all your Kark's Thumbs.
You
Or
know
I guess
what?
you can only have one in play. So.
Worth it.
Yeah.
You're going to have one in the deck. So, and a lot of good reprints too. I'm interested to see. We've gotten a lot of actually rare lands spoiled here, just because these are 4-color decks, and I was wondering how they would do that. A lot of pain lands, a lot of the check or not, I don't remember what we called these, the Rootbound Crags and that kind of stuff.
Just the Buddy lands.
Buddy
I
lands.
guess.
There you go. Sure. And then
M10 lands.
the Odyssey dual lands, which are kind of garbage.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
so-
Sungrass Prairie and Shadow Blood Ridge. They were okay back in the day, but I think we've come a little ways from then.
Yeah. So interesting though.
You did say Painlands. I think it'd be interesting if they print some of the Painlands that are in Bant Eldrazi and Modern have kind of increased a little bit. The Adakar Waste and Brushland.
Carplusion Forest had a little bit of a spike too, and that's already been spoiled. So we'll see. Sun Petal Grove and Sungrass Prairie are both here, so Brushland makes a lot of sense to me. But we'll see. So I think that these are looking sweet, and I think one of the other major draws here is they reveal the basic lands, and they sort of knock this out of the park. So there's 3 sets here of basic lands. One set is done by Rebecca Gay. Another set is by Mark Poole, and another set by Kev Walker, and they are gorgeous. And if you're like, oh man, Rebecca Gay, yeah, she hasn't done much in a while, and it's always been sort of polarizing in recent years because of the, sort of her throwback sort of art. And I'm so happy that they brought her back for this. And obviously Mark Poole as well. If you don't know, if you never played against me, and I've mentioned it on the cast before, but my go-to mountains are all Mark Poole Tempest mountains, and love me some Mark Poole lands. So.
Hey, don't sleep on Kev Walker either. I think
No,
Kev Walker is one of the best artists I think in Magic of all time.
His mountain is literally an active volcano.
Yeah,
It's just awesome.
yeah. All of these lanes are great. But yeah, I'm especially excited about Rebecca Gay just because we don't get to see a lot of her artwork. In recent.
Her forest on that feels like a very specific throwback. That's just very it's soothing. You're yeah. Dave and I were talking about this before the cast, and we were talking about this how he's got a couple cards signed by her and how distinct she was. And I remember being younger and just seeing Seed Time for the first time, and just being man, this is just awesome. So.
But yeah, I mean, they're good if we took time to actually talk about basic lands in a set. But a lot of people seem to be talking about it. The only downside here is that, well, there's 2 downsides. We're not gonna, well, as far as I could tell, we're not gonna get full art versions of these.
Yeah, or foil.
Which kind of stinks, or foil. Yeah.
Oh, if I get foil versions,
They'd be going straight in the cube.
they'd be in the battle box too. They'd be snapping the battle box.
Yeah. So Wizards, if you're listening, make it happen.
I don't know.
Ding.
But yeah, so we'll continue to follow Commander 2016. But so far, this seems like honestly, we talked about set fatigue. We've had so many sets over the summer, and this feels already there's a lot of hype for it, and it's sort of making up for that the fatigue we felt. I'm literally excited to buy a Commander deck, and I never have been before. So you did it, Wizards. Good job. All right, let's move on. They announced new RPTQ and GP promos. They are Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn, and Progenitus, respectively. And these are poop. Now, I say this only as someone who has literally gone through the PPTQ system into the RPTQ system enough times now that the RPTQ promo really does help. The secret way that it helps is that you can't play any other PPTQ events, so you can't farm value as you normally would if you're a grinder. And Liliana the Veil, value. Snapcaster Mage, value. Emrakul,
Yeah, it's awkward that it's already had a promo, alternate art already.
Had a promo alternate art and was just in Eternal Masters.
Yeah. So I'll ask you this.
Or wait, was it the last Modern Masters? I think
The last, yeah, Modern Masters too.
But even then,
All right. So what would you have rather them printed?
that's tough to say. I'm really not sure. Something I wish they would maybe do, and they haven't done this in a long time. But I think like if they want to give cards that have value, do like promo fetches. You know what I mean? You had Judge Foil fetches, with the Onslaught fetches. There's precedent for it. Something that will be sweet is actually high, like people want. Now, don't get me wrong. I like this art for Emrakul. I foil Emrakul in my Giftron deck. I'm replacing it with this for two reasons. One, because the art's better, and two, because I can't sell it for very much.
Yeah.
But I think you've got to continue. You've essentially made a promise that you will be giving value with these things, and this is just less value. And to that extent, like Progenitus as a GP promo just feels so lackluster. Like we had a string of great ones. I mean, going all the way back to Goblin Guide, and then we had
Even Stoneforge Mystic, the last one.
yeah, Stoneforge Mystic, Batterskull, Grizzlebrand. Like I think like Lotus Cobra is the most recent one that I know that doesn't see a lot of play. But even then, the art was unreal.
Yeah. Did we say Primeval Titan?
Primeval Titan was great.
Yeah.
That was like the secret one too, because I wasn't seeing a lot of play then, and like it's actually great that there are more copies of that because of it. Progenitus though, like it sees play in like one or two decks, and like Elves is not been a thing in a while, and even then Progenitus isn't generally the finisher anymore.
The worst part isn't even that it's Progenitus; it's like the same art Progenitus.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
This has already been reprinted. It was in, what was it from the vault? Was it Legends or
Maybe I don't.
It was in one of the. Oh, was it Annihilation or whatever that one was?
I,
It was in one of the from the vaults with the same art again. So it's like it's never had different art than what it's
let's
had.
see here. Progenitus was in the first Modern Masters, and was also in From the Vault Legends.
Yeah.
So yes, this is the fourth printing of Progenitus. Awesome.
Yeah, why?
So I don't know. This feels like really unexciting because like Stoneforge Mystic, like multiple people wanted those to play with outside of that. I don't know how many people want Progenituses for any reason.
Yeah.
But,
I think going back to the RPTQ promo, I think Noble Hierarch would have been a good one.
oh man, that would have been great.
Now they've already done they did the old border,
Yeah, the
but
judge.
those are, I mean, those ones aren't. There's not a super high supply of those. I feel like that are out there, but that would have been a great card because that's just one of those modern staples that is pretty high, pretty high price and is gonna always be good. Pretty much.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, to that end, like you can go something with like a Vendilion Click then maybe, or
Something like that.
Yeah, again, that does have a Judge foil, so maybe that's what they're not trying to do. But this already had a promo foil. I don't know. I understand it, and definitely have people who close to me who will say you're complaining about free things, and you're not wrong.
Well, yeah, but I think there is a legitimate gripe when you look at the last two, like when you had Liliana the Veil and Snapcaster.
Yeah,
that's
if you didn't qualify during Liliana the Veil, but you did qualify like for the RPTQ, like for for Amonkhet, then yeah, you're gonna feel a little embittered.
Oh,
Yeah.
I would have rather have the new Emrakul over this
seriously.
one.
Yeah, seriously,
Let's get the promised end.
But I don't know. But anyways, so those are the new setups. And then last thing, and sort of the biggest thing, standard rotation. Just kidding. Going back to what it was before. So we're in the first real rotation of the 18-month standard rotation with three 2 blocks in this. And they have gone back on this. They're going back to 2-year standard rotation. Aaron Forsyth posted the article last week trying to detail this, and you are more than welcome to read this. He suggests that it's because of huge feedback and the inability for players to break into standard. I have no idea where they extrapolate that idea from, since we've done it one time.
You're right.
And based on what I can see, and this may also be for masterpieces too, but standard prices are down ever since Cons rotated out because of fetches rotating anyways. Like standard prices are not bad. So I don't really know, but this is they're gonna call it what they want. This is an emergency thing. Like this is an emergency stopgap and change, because they literally mentioned that Amonkhet had to be told, like the people working on Amonkhet had to be told to go back and check to make sure that their stuff doesn't break Battle for Zendikar, because you're gonna get the Eldrazi for another 6 months. You know what I mean? And that's anytime you have that kind of stuff, you have to be careful. So this seems incredibly weird. At the end of the day, I don't care very much. I was happy about the change. I'm still happy that they're sticking with the two set block paradigm, but this just feels so weird. Like so weird.
Yeah, it really kind of came out of nowhere, and it almost felt like they were like, oh, hey guys, that standard rotation, yeah, we're just gonna put that back. Don't worry about it. All right, have a good day. Like, I don't know. Like you said, it did feel like it was very like almost an emergency-ish that they had to do it. But I mean, I agree with what you were saying. I mean, I don't know how they could have possibly gathered enough data to be like, oh, you know what, we really need to change this like immediately because we're losing people left and right. Like, I don't know how. I mean, maybe the data's out there, but I don't know how they
Well,
would
you
have.
know, honestly, you have people like Corbin Hoser who post the like the most recent meetings, the financial meetings that they have at Hasbro, and Magic certainly wasn't in a bad position in the most recent one of those. So I don't really know what this is from. You know, it definitely is awkward if you look at, you know, we'll look at the numbers for like the GPs from this last weekend, and when you start to see certain percentage numbers of a card, and then you realize that they're going to be here for 2 years. You know, this is where standard can start to go back to that dangerous territory it was before.
And this is, I mean, I feel like this was part of the reason why they wanted to go to this shorter rotation, so you didn't have Thoughtseize and, you know, Mutavault and all these cards that were dominant in standard for, you know, basically the entire time they were legal.
And that allows you to print cards like that knowing they won't be around for that long. But so I don't know what this does even for like reprint policy, to be quite honest.
It's just awkward. I mean, it's in the long run, it probably is better for everyone. You know, if you kind of look at the whole picture, like I know for personally, it's better for me because I don't plan on playing a lot of standard, at least in the foreseeable future. So I can kind of keep like a deck and not have to worry about it rotating out in, you know, a couple months. You know what I mean?
And I think that's where people were at before, and this may not end up being that big of a deal. It's just such a weird thing to do. I will say I would, if I were you know, I am a standard player, so I'm doing this, but I would pay attention to people like Chase Andres, who have already started saying, and pay attention to the way the old pricing used to work. You know, for example, we have, you know, the new fast lands in standard. Well, if you pay attention to the cycle for those, when they were around for 2 years, when you got to that last 6 months of fast lands, but all the decks needed them, but Scars have been out of print for a year and a half, those things hit between 20 and $30. So like, you know, if you're a standard player, it encourages you to go back to what you had to do before, which is make sure you get all your lands, pick up your staples, and sit for a while. So if that makes it better, we'll see. Again, the idea of masterpieces seems already working, is keeping standard prices down anyways, so maybe that is also going to help. But I don't know. It's just very weird. You know, they're so swingy. Sometimes they do such a good job of explaining a reason for something's happening, and sometimes they just seem like startled children. Like, standard bad, change good, okay, go. Oh my god, oh jeez.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think the most awkward thing to come out of this was that I traded a couple of my Gideons to you, and then all of a sudden they're like a 4 of in every deck, and they're going to be in standard for another 6
Oh man,
months.
they shot up to $30, and there were 4 of them in every deck, and I got them.
Yeah.
Bing,
So,
bing.
but at least I still have a couple of them, so I didn't trade them all away.
That is true. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that, and I'll be really interested to see like if we get some weird stuff in Amon Ket that we read the card and we go, that doesn't seem like I should have done that, and then we'll read like Stoddard's M files and it'll be like, oh yeah, it used to do this, but then it was going to be in standard with Eldrazi and it can't be anymore. So. All right, so before we shift to competitive, take a minute here to tell you about the next standard PPTQ that will be happening at Comic Town on Saturday, November 5th. They're giving away $1,000 in store credit across the top 8. I believe first place gets $400 in credit. And honestly, like, that's great compared to most prizes for PPTQs. Like, store credit goes a long way to buy singles, but even like sleeves and that sort of thing, and it will feel pretty great. So yeah, you should definitely plan to come down. You know, this weekend's Eternal Weekend. Do what you want to do, but plan for next week to come down to the store that really runs the best, you know, PPTQs in you know, Central Ohio. So
For sure.
moving into competitive though, hey, did you know the Pro Tour happened while we were sort of on break?
Yeah, it feels like we've been off for a very long time, but we only missed 1 week, but like it was kind of an awkward week to miss. But
Magic moves kind of fast, you know. You don't. I was getting
Magic comes at you fast.
No, so I'm trying to like Ferris Bueller, like, you know, Magic comes at you pretty fast. You don't stop to smell the mechanical roses every now and then. You could miss it. So yeah, PT Kaladesh in beautiful Honolulu, Hawaii, was taken down by Showtime Shota Yasuoka. Did you really? Is that really his nickname?
Oh, that's really a thing now.
Oh my gosh! All right,
That's awesome, though. I think
no, it's definitely spelled without the W. It's Showtime,
Oh.
like Shota. So
yeah. I think more Magic players should have nicknames.
oh yeah,
Like
that'd be
that's
great.
we're missing that. I feel like they got to bring that back, like almost like I don't know, like old school football or something.
Yeah, I embrace my nickname.
Yeah, but I'm just saying there's not enough.
Oh, I agreed. But yeah, Shota Yasuoka playing his own build of Grixis Control took down Carlos Romao playing Jeskai Control. We had a Control on Control finals. Blue decks playing blue finishers and counter spells. A lot of them.
Yeah.
There's a large portion of the Magic world that was very, very happy with this.
I was pretty excited about it. It was funny too because as legend has it, apparently Yasuoka like built the deck the night before or something, or the day before. I don't know if that's actually true or not, but that's what he says. So
'Twas the night before the PT, and
Yeah.
all through the house. I was
yeah, I don't think it was actually the night before because they have to submit the deck
Oh,
list
yeah, okay,
electronically. But it was like it came down at like the last second or something like that. But I mean, if anybody could do that, it's going to be Yasuoka, especially with control decks, because the man is it's just what he does. Like even if control's not good, he's just going to run it.
and honestly, I think the most interesting about his control deck versus some of the others, most of the others we saw were of some sort of white persuasion, playing Fumigate, which is a pretty important card on the weekend. And he, moved away from that. Playing Grixis, he didn't really have access to a traditional, sort of Wrath effect. You do have some.
He had Radiant Flames.
Radiant Flames, yeah.
Yeah.
But like he sort of avoided that, and he also was playing for Thing in the Ice. Now, Torrential Gearhulk was really the big winner of the Pro Tour as far as a card, showing up as a finisher in a number of decks and really putting in a lot of work with with counter spells, but also with Glimmer of Genius, which is a great card. Saw a ton of play. Just being able to flash in your Gearhulk for value and draw 2 cards and get a little bit of energy depending on what your deck is doing. Was pretty good. But him playing for Thing in the Ice, we saw multiple games in the top 8 against aggressive opponents where he just turned the corner so quickly. These vehicles decks have a chance to draw out of it, especially with like copters and that sort of thing. And he doesn't let him. That Thing in the Ice just flipped, and you've got 2 attacks essentially, and you're done. And to that end, you saw Wandering Fuel will be another card that spiked this weekend as well, with most of the control decks playing it. Another card that you can just sort of take control of the board and then hit for chunks of 4. So yeah, I really like these builds. Honestly, we won't delve too far into the PT because we already have Standard moving pretty fast after this, and you haven't really seen these decks be replicated in their broader success in a GP just yet. But it's nice to know that in the format, the cards are there, the mana is there with these fast lands to really kind of do whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, we even saw. We'll talk about the GPs that happened last weekend, but there was a 4-color aggro deck. I think when we really talk about mana bases, Aether Hub is kind of a card that kind of ties it all in. I mean, that card has been just really, really solid.
And that's why cards like Harness Lightning and Glimmer of Genius have been very good, because they leave behind extra mana to power your City of Brass. It's like your City of Brass that comes with a plug now, and sometimes the plug comes out. You got
to charge it up a little bit. Yeah, get some energy. But yeah, congrats to Shota Yasuoka. I mean, he's been he was somebody that was kind of borderline for the Hall of Fame, or I didn't feel that way, but a lot of people did, because he didn't have like the raw results that a lot of people felt like he needed to get in. And since he's been inducted, he's really just he top 4 worlds just this past World Championship, and he comes back and he wins. So he'll be at Worlds next year since he's the first Pro Tour champion. But yeah, finals was pretty great if you like control mirrors. So go back and watch.
Oh
that.
yeah, he essentially decked him. Yasuoka decked his opponent at one of the games.
Ramau had a Dovin Bond emblem. Shota was just like, yeah, whatever, don't care about that.
Yeah, Winter Orb doesn't matter when you have 20 lands in play.
Yeah.
It's a fun fact.
Yeah.
So, honestly, the top 8 though was a good representative of a lot of the format. We had some Pierre Dagon playing an interesting Dynavolt Tower deck, and there were a bunch of those at the PT, but they haven't really done too much since then. You've got a couple flavors of vehicles. You have red white vehicles and Mardu vehicles. Ben Hull playing red white vehicles, and then Li Shitian playing Mardu vehicles. And honestly, we're seeing that the type of aggressive deck that's really being replicated the most right now is actually we saw Sam Black do well with this at the Classic, but the red white tokens list by Makis Matsukas, which just so you know looks a lot like another person's deck. I won't say whose.
He has outnumbers in his deck, so I think it looks more like my deck than anybody else's. But we'll just leave it at that.
Anyways, I will say the Sam Black version does look more like what you were trying to do originally before you switched to the horrific, let's play the goggles.
The goggles, yeah.
monstrosity.
Don't play the goggles, but everything else was good. So just replace goggles with Declaration of Stones.
Well, so Sam Black's version, we'll get to that, but it put decks in the sideboard and did play the black white fast land and the
the Scrap Heap Scroungers? Yeah, yeah.
So we're seeing these.
I was on the right track.
Well, I mean, so it's worth. I think it's definitely much more like because the reason we didn't like doing that week one is I didn't like stretching the mana base. But if control is so present in the format, then it's definitely worth doing it, even if it stretches the mana base a little bit, because it gives you so much game against those decks.
Yeah, well, I think it's that, and also week one, I think, and I'm pretty sure you would agree with this, that I think we expected red white or some version of red white aggro to be the most played deck, and it was.
It certainly was.
And that version, if you're running Scrap Heap Scroungers and Bushwhackers and Servo Expeditions, you're going to be at a disadvantage in a mirror type match because you're not really going to be able to interact as well.
Right.
But it's certainly probably better against control because you're putting them under so much more pressure.
But yeah, so a lot of different flavors of vehicles. I do want to talk briefly about Matt Nass and his first PT Top 8, which honestly he's been credited as one of the major, he's the major deck designer of a number of really important decks in Standard the last few years, including Rally the Ancestors. To see him get his due here is interesting, and he's playing a real combo deck in Temur Aetherworks, which is the most represented deck on day one at the Pro Tour. Now, it fizzled out because the control decks were really, really good against it, and so were the blue-white flash decks, which we'll talk about in a second, because Spellqueller is great against it. But they seem to figure out how to make Aetherworks Marvel consistent enough to really try to crush the PT with it. And Matt Nass got the closest.
Yeah, I was happy to see him finally get there. Like you said, he's been pretty influential, and even with this specific deck, I think a lot of his teammates credited him with being the kind of the main guy to kind of make all the numbers work there.
Yeah.
So unfortunately for him, like you said, Spellqueller is very good against it, as well as Ceremonious Rejection was a card that a lot of people had. Even Li Shitian splashed it in his he splashed the fourth color in his already 3-color aggro deck just to play that card on the sideboard.
Yeah, you have Aether Hubs, and then you play the red-blue fast lands.
Yeah, yeah.
All the fast lands.
Unfortunately for Matt, if you watch his match against Carlos Ramao in the top 8, it wasn't pretty. We'll just put it that way. When the deck doesn't when it doesn't get the Aetherworks Marvel online, it just doesn't really do much of anything.
No, you saw a deck where you had a bunch of puzzle knots in play, and that was it.
And you're drawing Ulamogs that you can basically never cast,
right.
And it's
Now, it is important. There's another version of that deck floating around that is now playing Hedron Archives and a couple of Nissa's renewals, so that you have the backup plan of casting them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This deck is not well positioned against the next deck we'll talk about here, which is Joey Manor's White Blue Flash, and unfortunately for Joey, he looked like he had a good matchup against Ramao, but he had some bad keeps. He kept a sketchy one-lander. And just sort of got punished by his draws. But this is really the deck of the format at the moment. Surprise, strong creatures that have flash, are good. And you see sort of the sort of familiar foes here: Avacyn's, Spellquellers, Reflector Mages, and Thraben Inspector. The best card in the format. Let's just be honest. That is has there ever been a better one drop than Thraben Inspector?
It's the best Smuggler's Copter pilot in all the land.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it comes from a plane where doesn't even understand copters, and it's so good at inspecting things that it learns how to do it immediately.
It's inspected that instruction manual real quick.
Well, no, so it's definitely just Inspector Gadget, right? The copter comes out of its hat.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh.
Um, yeah, like
All right, no,
Yeah.
Blue White Flash is just called Inspector Gadget from now on. That's just what it is.
sure. Yeah, we'll go with that. Yeah, Blue White Flash. I really, when I saw the top 8 list, I really liked this deck, and then as I kind of as they published all the other lists that did well, some of the what they have like 21 to 24 point deck lists and all this stuff.
Yeah.
You see a lot of Blue White Flash up.
Yeah.
Did really well in the standard
Lurking.
portion. So I think even though it didn't win the Pro Tour, I think a lot of people looked at this and were like, okay, there's definitely something here, and we kind of saw that happen at this past weekend's GPs. A lot of people picked that up, and I think in general, I think it's definitely like the play style that I think a lot of competitive players like to play. They like to play, if you can play your cards at instant speed, like almost like playing fairies or almost like collected company decks that had Bounding Crisis and all the flash creatures and things like that. So it's not surprising that really became as popular as it did this past weekend.
And let's take that as a way to transition and move into GP Providence then, and we'll go right into the day 2 metagame breakdown. If you don't believe us that Blue White Flash was that deck, there were 88 copies of it on day 2 in Providence, 25.6% of the day 2 metagame. Red White Vehicles was second with 31 copies, and Black Green Delirium after that. I think another interesting deck to look at after that, though, with also another 27 copies, Black Red Zombie Madness, and that's quite literally the Jerry Thompson zombie list that he sort of championed. Played at the Pro Tour, but didn't do great because of his draft.
It's Zombie Madness.
Yeah, probably gonna play this at FNM this week actually. So I put together all the cards for it.
Really?
Yeah, I'm kind of excited.
I don't know that I've actually seen this deck.
We'll come back and talk about it in a second here. Let's take a look at the top 8 though here of of Providence. So we had the winner here is I'm gonna try this last name. This is my evoking Morgan right here. So Wang Yichen.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
All right, good. He defeated Seth Manfield. Hey, look, Seth Manfield back in the finals of a G. Just when you thought like maybe his run was good, no, the guy's still incredible. We also had like Dave Shields and Osip Lebedowitz in the top 8. But look there, Blue White Flash. Honestly, it doesn't really change that much. You see, going up to the 4 stasis snares, some of them are cutting rattle chains, others are not. But in general, like the game plan remains the same. Gideons are great here, Smuggler's Copters are great here, and you get to play a lot of counter magic out of the board too. I think the one thing that was interesting, though, and a number of decks were doing this, a bunch of decks were playing the Brazella package out of the sideboard. So they had some number of Gisellas, and a couple of them had a Bruna as well. So they could board into like this big package where they just get, Gruntilda and play against you. So I thought that was kind of spicy.
Yeah, I saw that a lot of the blue-white lists were playing Gisela in the main, and I guess that's supposed to be a mirror match card.
It's pretty good.
Seems good.
When your removal is literally stasis snare and all your creatures have 4 or less toughness, it's pretty good. It's also really good against Copter. So even 4/4 Copters out of the White Red Vehicles list.
Yeah, so I mean it's nice to see that card's finally seeing some play after it was so hyped coming out of that set, but still nowhere near I think is where everybody expected it to be.
Yeah, for sure.
But
so.
Magic's funny like that. I mean, you see a card that in a vacuum is great, but just depending on how the format shapes up, it may just be completely unplayable.
Now, you mentioned a card in a vacuum that looked pretty good. I do think we have to sort of revisit Smuggler's Copter again. So people were running the numbers on Smuggler's Copter in the day 2 metagame and also the top 64. And it's crazy. The percentage of like Smuggler's Copters is somewhere in the 80s of like in lists. And that's... we talked about this before. You start looking at cards historically that have those kind of numbers or that present, and you're putting Smuggler's Copter once again in the same. It's Yumazawa's Jite is like it's in the same category, and you're like, that's not the same card. I hate to tell you, it's not bad.
I mean, it doesn't feel as broken as Jite, just because it was very obviously like if you've ever played against a Jite and like didn't have any answer to it. You just felt like you couldn't really do anything. You're just going to lose. Copter is good in a more, I guess it's not as in your face. Like you definitely, if the longer the game goes with that thing being unanswered, it's just you're just getting further and further behind.
Yeah, absolutely. The selection offered by beyond the fact that it allows like creatures like like Thraben Inspector to upgrade essentially. The selection you get across a game it's stark. If you're playing mirror matches where you just even where you're just attacking a couple of turns, seeing 3 or 4 or 5 extra cards out of a deck that's aggressively slanted, it's not card advantage. When I say seeing extra cards, I'm just saying pure selection. Like,
Well,
if you discarded a couple lands and got spells out of it, you were so far ahead.
Right, or even like getting digging to your sideboard cards, or
Or your
digging
one-offs in the main. To be quite
digging to your
honest.
Avacyn's. Yeah, exactly. So
Now, if you want to take a look here, Dave, Jackie Wang's Black Red Zombie Madness deck. This is what we're talking about. So
okay.
the normal zombie package, Crypt Breakers, the prized amalgams, the haunted deads, the Voldaren prize, which that card is real nice. Then it's playing Cathartic Reunions, Lightning Axis, Fiery Tempers, and honestly, it's just trying to you're not in this deck. Some of the decks are splashing a little bit of blue. Not this one. It doesn't even care.
I know. I love all these decks that are playing. They're playing prized amalgams that have no way to actually cast them. It's just like whatever. I'm not going to waste my time with that.
Yeah.
If we're casting a 3/3 for 3, we're doing it wrong.
Now, and the nice thing about this deck is, like, if you look at the board, it gets some nice options. Obviously, you have access to Unlicensed Disintegration, which is really, if you can play it, it's one of the better removal spells in the format. And if you have Smugglers Copters in play, then like it becomes real gross. But you also get things like Distended Mindbender, which is just perfect on the board, especially against a lot of these combo and control decks where you can really hit a couple of good cards. So I like where this deck is at, and I credit to Jerry T for really he mentioned this as an archetype when he started pushing red black aggro, and has really been working on it and played at the PT, and despite his frustrating finish, the deck itself seems to have taken off. So
All right. I think we should talk about these black-green Delirium decks.
if we have to.
So this is the deck that actually won the GP. And let me see here. So the winners list, interestingly enough, was playing 0. What's the card I'm thinking of? 0 Grimflare.
Yeah,
which is really weird. Most lists that are out there now are playing for that card, and a lot of people are saying it's one of the best cards in the deck. Wang decided to get rid of those and play for Sylvan Advocates instead. So I guess out with the new, in with the old. Yeah, I mean, he really just dismantled Seth Manfield in the finals. It was kind of surprising. I mean, you would expect Seth Manfield is probably the much more decorated player, but I believe Wang had more Emrakuls. I'm not sure. Let me see here.
I see, so
No, he still just had the one.
yeah, Manfield had the second one on his board. You do see Manfield playing like Mindwreck Demons and Pilgrim's Eyes, which is interesting. But honestly, their lists aren't that dissimilar, but it does seem I don't know. These Delirium lists, none of them excite me. I don't know. I can't get myself pumped about these lists.
Yeah, we kind of got like the cool like aggro versions that kind of came out the first couple weeks. This one's kind of more of a throwback to prior to Kaladesh, where it's a little bit more controlling, and plays traverse the walled package and.
I think if you look at Maxime Bellinger's list, the one above, that one you can definitely see like really going all in on traverse. A lot of one-ofs. Coetus, only one Sylvan Advocate, one Tireless Tracker, one Verdurous Gearhulk. And I don't know if that, or one Descendant Mindbender. I don't know if that's how you're supposed to build it, but I think it's interesting that you can have so much difference. In the top 8, you have 3 different types of lists. So
I mean, they're all just. I mean, these are what black green decks are supposed to be like, right? They're just kind of grindy.
Yeah.
A lot of removal. Just gonna get incremental advantages throughout the game. They do have a nice top end in Emrakul, so the longer the game goes, that Emrakul is eventually going to come out and likely end the game, and
Right.
if not, put you in a really bad spot. So, you know, that's essentially what they're working to the whole time.
Sure. So, but yeah, and then we had a couple road white vehicles lists rounding out, and the vehicles lists have started really to separate themselves from the tokens lists. The vehicles lists go all the way up to Archangel Avacyn now. So, and they're playing the 24th land because of it. So the deck's getting a little bit bigger. Certainly not as fast as it was before, but possibly a little bit more robust. So.
Well, not as fast, but you can still get those draws that are just curve out and kill you on turn
definitely.
4.
No, it's definitely closer to a curve out deck now than it is like a true like hyper aggressive deck. But
Yep.
they are playing a lot of fleet wheel cruisers, and that is the top end of that curve. That is just it just hammers people. Just like and a lot of times out of this deck it's a 6/4, not a 5, not a 5/3. So.
Yeah.
But now, one more interesting thing to come out of GP Providence was the disqualification of one Oliver 2. So you can read the official statement here, but essentially he was disqualified for bribery, offering to split with an opponent and then have that opponent concede to him so that he could get the pro point. Apparently, a judge heard them discussing PayPal information and came over and stopped them.
Yeah, it is important to note that the opponent also got DQ'd, so it wasn't just Oliver 2. But I mean,
Interesting though, they only mentioned Oliver's name and not his opponent's.
yeah. Well, I mean, he's the big name, the big name
Yeah,
pro. But it is
journalism-
awkward.
Journalism would tell you that this is not okay.
Right,
but-
right. I mean, he from what this is saying, I mean, he absolutely deserved to get DQ'd. I mean, if you go to pretty much any tournament now, any tournament that I go to, there's always an announcement before the last round that you play games of Magic to determine you do not roll dice. You do not play games of Pokemon, whatever, rock, paper, scissors. So, I mean, he should know better. I mean, he is a younger guy, but he really should know better than that.
To be honest, he's had a really impressive run, and I talked to him a little bit at the PT for Shadows of Renishrad, but he's had a couple of bad looks recently. He had some tweets out of the Pro Tour that made him seem less than
like kind of elitist.
Yeah, it was really weird. And then like for this to happen, like there was more than a few people I talked to who were like, yeah, I kind of grinned about this, and you're like, well. Like how quickly one's public perception can change. So
right.
Hopefully, I don't know if this will result in some sort of ban. It may result in suspension.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, who knows?
I don't know how that works, but hopefully that he takes that seriously. So yeah, don't bribe people. Hashtag.
Yeah, don't do that. I guess especially if you're a big name pro, but even if you're not, just just
and,
don't.
I think there was some buzz about like people being sort of upset that like, oh, well, you just happened to overhear this, and it's like, well, yeah, a judge did just happen to overhear this, and even that judge was close to the table because it's a platinum pro. Who cares? Like, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you won't get DQ'd for this. So, at the end of the day, that's where we're at. So let's take a look here at the other GP then, which was Kuala Lumpur. Taking a look at that day 2 metagame breakdown.
It's even more blue-white.
So they had 85 copies of white-blue flash in day 2, with a 34.69% of the metagame, followed by black-green delirium, white-red vehicles, and Mardu vehicles, and then zombies dredge. So we really do see those really taking over. What's interesting though is despite having these control decks win the Pro Tour, we don't see them in the metagame breakdown. We don't see the combo decks there either.
Well, we're not all Hall of Famers.
Well, that's certainly true.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Jerry T played a Grixis control deck at GP Providence. He's just like, well, I'm not Shota, so.
But this one was taken down by Fumaya Matsumoto with Mardu vehicles, so representing the cars, if you will.
Yeah.
But we also had Yuki Ichikawa in this top 8 playing Flash. We had he's one of the ones who was playing the Ford Gisela and the Bruna in the sideboard, so he was all in.
Yep. Yuta Takahashi was another.
Yeah, he's also
he's
playing.
a Pro Tour top 8. He had a top 8 at what was the last one before Kaladesh?
Eldritch Moon.
Eldritch Moon, yeah. And Teruya Kakumai
Yeah.
is another guy that I recognized. He's playing Marty Vehicles.
And yeah, he's playing the version here that going closer to what Li Tian was playing, where you have Cultivator's Caravan. Which, man, I remember somebody on this podcast saying that card wasn't going to see any standard play, and a top 8 at a PT, and here it is in the GP. I don't know who that guy
Did
was.
I say no standard play?
Yeah, you said you didn't think it was good enough. You were confused when we were talking about it.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I might have said that. I also said Jace was bad too. So.
Oh, fair enough. And I also
Don't listen to me.
I like though that, like, as opposed to having to play Declaration in Stone, like the mana here is real greedy, but playing Unlicensed Disintegration, really offers you a chance to steal games. The red white version just doesn't have that reach. When we first tested red white, I really liked Incendiary Flow just because there were so many games where you needed some reach, but you had to be able to kill copters. So this card sort of solves that.
Does
it's
both.
hard to cast.
Yeah.
But it's very good.
Yeah, but it is very easy to get an artifact in play, so it's pretty much always going to deal the 3 damage.
Yeah, and then you see Matsumoto's like that too. He's less all in though. He only has 2 unlicensed disintegrations, so he's, but he is going so far as to have the ceremonious rejections on the sideboard. So, I think it's interesting too. Like people were even talking about how in the Pro Tour you had a bunch of Void Shatters, but you really shouldn't be playing Void Shatter anymore. You should be playing Scatter to the Winds, because Void Shatter can be countered by Ceremonious Rejection. So you had the 2 decks in the finals of the PT that can counter each other's counterspell with a spell that shouldn't be able to counter each other's counterspell. Oh,
Yeah.
magic. Yeah, but this is crazy how much Blue-White Flash is in the top 8 of this. I think it's, 6 copies of Blue-White Flash and then 2 copies of Vehicles in the top 8. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's really not surprising. Like I said, I mean, the Blue-White Flash is kind of like the style that I think a lot of people like to play. It's certainly the type of style that I like. And I mean, I feel like it should be pretty well positioned against the control decks that did well at the Pro Tour. So it's really not a surprise to see this. Now we'll see if people react to this. I don't know what the matchup looks like between Blue White Flash and Black Green Delirium. If Delirium is advantaged, then maybe we'll see an uptick in that even more, since it won GP Providence and had a pretty good showing at GP Kuala Lumpur as well. So
yeah. And just even looking past the top 16, it's a lot of vehicles. There's a Delirium list and a lot of Blue-White Flash. So, yeah, I'm interested to see where the format goes here. But if you are updating your metagame testing, Blue-White Flash is now enemy number 1. So figure out how you can beat that. And if you can't, you have your answer. Yeah, so that's standard right now. I still like standard. I'm enjoying playing it. I actually did play in a PBTQ over the weekend, and it only had 8 people, so I won it. Yay! But so now I can't play in the cool 1,000 store credit event next week. But I was happy to play it. I'm kind of sad that I can't play a couple more PBTQs because I've been enjoying playing the format. I like former host co-host Jordan Kennedy was there with us, and he came up to help us out fire the event, but really haven't played much standard. Someone handed him red white vehicles, and he was like, "Man, Smuggler's Copter is a fun card." I'm like, "Yeah, it is a fun card. You feel like you're doing all the stuff."
it's really good.
And he was just like, "Man," and he's like, "Sometimes it's a 4/4, and I did this," and I was like, "Yeah, it sure is." And he was you can see how the decks feel fun. So hopefully it just doesn't get too stale.
And from what I can tell, and again, I apologize, I haven't been playing much standard since week 1, essentially. But from what I can gather, I think like a lot of pros are saying, it's a very skill-intensive format as well. There are a lot of decisions to be made, and your decisions do matter, which I think is important. I think it's important to, at least if that's, I don't know how much of that is reality, but even if it's just the perception that, hey, your decisions matter, it's like that's going to be a more enjoyable format to me, anyway.
No, I totally agree with you on that. Last format, Collective Company really did make it feel like your decisions didn't matter. Your opponent hit a really good Collective Company or drew Collective Company,
Right.
and it felt like it reset a large portion of your game. And this doesn't feel like that. Smuggler's Copter, again, despite its saturation, which does put it on, I think, watch. I've enjoyed playing with it because those decisions are all important. I mean, you might look. I definitely have lost a couple games where you look back and you say, "All right, I discarded the wrong card on turn 3." You know what I mean? And that's a decision making tree that goes all the way back to there, and that's I love that. Like that is good Magic to me. So, so if we want to move into the open here, I will say, because I don't think we had it on here, and since we're still talking standard, if we look at the classic real quick before we look at the main event, That was taken by Brad Carpenter. Sorry, Dave.
Hey,
Team
I mean,
Nexus.
he's doing pretty well for himself. So
But
Good for
playing Blue-Eyed Flash. And you see 3 more copies of Blue-Eyed Flash in that top 8. However, I will say the top 8 of the Classic offers a couple other options. You had Sam Black's White-Red tokens, which if you're interested in where the deck that Morgan and I played at the Open might move to, I think that's really where you might want to look. And then you also had a copy of Green-Red Energy in the top 8, which I know Morgan had played around with that deck because who doesn't like attacking your opponent for 20 or 40? And then in the 9th place, there's also a Black-White mid-range deck, which, interestingly enough, a lot of the tools for Black-White control are still there, but the loss of language really seems to have, put it in a bad position. But, a lot of the removal spells and then the Planeswalkers are still there for that deck, and it's interesting to see if you look here, you have your Gideons, you have a lot of removal, and we have Kambal for the first time that I've seen anywhere near a top 8. That's the 2/3 that whenever your opponent casts a non-creature spell, they lose 2 life and you gain 2 life. And man, if half the format wants to play Aetherworks Marvel or any of the control decks, man, give me a Kambal. So
Gumball soup.
I would definitely take a look at some of the lists there in the Classic if you want to see where Standard might be at. So
Yeah, I think just to kind of wrap up Standard, I think we're going to continue to see it evolve. I think other than Smuggler's Copter, that doesn't seem like there's just one dominant card. I don't think we're going to see 5 different Collected Company decks. So at least that's the hope anyway. And if there are, then hey, we get these cards for another extra 3 months or whatever.
So, let's move into a little bit of Modern here. So the Open stopped in Milwaukee, and was taken down by Caleb Durward. So congrats to him. He's playing Bant Spirits, a Collected Company deck. Shock.
Yeah.
We also had a couple other names in the top 8. Ken Ketter, which we'll talk about him in a sec. But you want to take a look at the list here?
Yeah, so this Bant Spirits list, he's basically playing a bunch of standard legal spirits. So we got, you got your Mausoleum Wanderer and your Rattle Change and your Selfless Spirits and your Spell Quellers. Mix that with some good modern staples. So Noble Hierarch, Geist of Saint Traft. It's a pretty good spirit.
Good spirit.
Yeah. Drog Skull Captain. That's pretty good.
Spirit.
That's a pretty sweet one. And of course, another format staple, Steel of the Godhead.
Format staple.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't even know what this card did. So
that's the combo with Geist of Saint Traft.
Yeah. So this is an aura. Cost 2 colorless and a hybrid blue-white. And it has, as long as enchanted creature is white, it gets +1/+1 and has lifelink. And as long as enchanted creature is blue, it gets +1/+1 and is unblockable. There you go.
So you make your
So it's a
Geist of Saint Traft
4/4,
4/4, yeah.
oh yeah, unblockable lifelink hexproof. It's pretty good. No, this is a deck that he is he's been doing the 365-day streamer challenge. So he's been streaming every day, and this is kind of one of the decks that he was kind of working on stream. And hilariously enough, he found a way to stream the morning of the tournament so that he could keep doing his stream every day thing. So I guess he was streaming from his friend's computer or something like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
Man, my favorite thing about this deck, the Rock Swarmwalk in the sideboard.
oh, the card's hot.
That comes in off Collected Company.
Oh yeah.
Whoo!
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of what you would expect, I think, out of if you said, hey, Bant Spirits and Modern, except for the Steel of the Godheads, maybe. But I mean, really, it's just kind of like another blue-white flash deck, really, for being honest.
Yeah, it definitely is.
But yeah, it was pretty cool to see something fairly new kind of break out and take down the tournament.
Yeah, and if you look at the rest of the top 8, we really do sort of have a lot of our known enemies here. He did beat Caleb Durwood did beat Ad Nauseam in the finals, so that's pretty awesome. Shout out for Morgan there. But we had Dredge have a resurgence a little bit this weekend. There were 9 copies of Dredge in the top 32, and I do believe that that was the card hoarder deck. the last weekend. So that makes sense. Again, I don't think Dredge is taking over the format. It wasn't around for a few weeks, and then a whole team played it and took it back. So still a fine deck. Then you have Scapeshift, Affinity. There's a Jeskai Flash deck, and then Zoo. It's been a while. Just regular Zoo. I know you're used to seeing Suicide in front of it, but no.
Oh, the Burning Tree. Yeah. Burning Tree Bushwhacker. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and if you look at the, so that one's interesting. The Jeskai Flash deck from James Johnson is definitely like Avid Mind Sensor, Snapcaster, Spellcaller, Geist Saint Trapped, and Vendilion Click, and then a bunch of Jeskai spells. So this is really close to the old Team Geist deck.
Yeah, it's like a Jeskai Geist, pretty much. Yeah, I don't know how well that's positioned, but seems perfectly reasonable. Yeah, there's a lot of good cards in it, so can't go wrong.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk here quickly, though. Modern is still in a good place here, but we did have something sort of awkward happen here, and that was with Kent Ketter. Now, this has become sort of a big hullabaloo on social media, and I'll try to sort of explain this. So, again, Kent was on the Team Card Hoarder deck playing Dredge, and on camera, and I don't remember which round it was. It was in day 2.
Round 9 or something.
Yeah, his opponent cast Rest in Peace, and on camera you can see Kent move his sideboard or his graveyard out of his graveyard like it's exiled, and then he puts it back in and goes to take his turn. Now, the judge then ruled in his favor that his opponent had missed the trigger, and if you didn't know that, Rest in Peace has a trigger when it enters the battlefield to exile all graveyards, and then whenever a card would go to there, you exile it. So that first trigger can be missed. Okay,
Right.
So the question was, did Kent acknowledge the trigger by moving the cards from his graveyard out and then putting them back in? And I
Yeah.
think, Dave, you're firmly on the side that he did.
Yeah, and just to clarify, he just had like a singular
it
conflict,
was a
conflagrate,
conflagrate, yeah.
right? Which is relevant, it being in the graveyard. Yeah, I mean, I'm on the side of obviously we didn't get any verbal. You can go find the clip online, and we can't hear any of the audio, so we don't really know what was said between the players. But I think if a Rest in Peace gets played and you start moving a card over, to me that's you have acknowledged that the trigger has happened and you're exiling your card. And if you pull it back, that seems. I don't want to say it's shady, but it seems almost like an angle shooting.
I definitely think it is angle shooting. I know Kent and Jordan. I sort of joke around and talk with Kent. The whole last name things. We all end up being at the same spot for, excuse me, players meeting and stuff like that. And honestly, I know him to be a pretty positive guy. I think in this case, this definitely looks bad. Now, supposedly, the conversation that happened was his opponent said, "Rest in peace, go," and Kent was like, "Is that it? Go?" And he was like, "Yeah." And then that's when he moved it back. And then, like he said, he confirmed again, and they untapped. And the judge heard that conversation, that interaction, which is why he ruled in Kent's favor. He did, though. The judge did say, had he known, because he was on camera that he moved it. Had he known or noticed that Kent had moved his, conflagrate back and then put it back, he would have then not ruled in his favor. So.
Right, and again, not having the audio for that makes it a little bit. If you're just coming into it and seeing it, you were like, "Oh, what was that?" But yeah, we don't have the whole story. We only have the clip to go off of. But still, even seeing that, it just I don't know. It's just
It's I'll be very honest. It's not a good look. It's one of those things. I will say that I think he's got a ton. Just being on Facebook, and granted, maybe just who I'm friends with, but I've seen him get a lot of heat for this. A lot of heat. I'm going to be honest. I don't think he was cheating. So
no, I don't think so either.
And the fact that the judge ruled, a lot of people pulled up. If you look at the rules, it does say that the person responsible for their trigger is the player who controls the spell. So you could argue this, but there are other places too. Like somebody mentioned, and this was the most compelling argument to me. But like Thraben Inspector is a good example of this. So someone's a Thraben Inspector, and like their opponent because their opponent hands them a clue, because I've done that because I have tokens out half the time, right?
Yeah.
Well, if I hand them a clue, but then they don't say anything else, can I take the clue back? And say, "Oh, you missed this," because maybe
it is somewhat similar, yeah.
But maybe the reason they didn't say get a clue is because they assumed that you gave them a clue to acknowledge it, and like in that scenario, then that makes it look even worse because maybe his opponent then did think it was acknowledged because Ketter moved his hand, and that sounds a lot worse. Now, I think it's impossible. Like, if you're going to sit there and say, "Oh, well, Kent knew that was going to happen, and that's why he did it," that's ridiculous. He's not planning beforehand how he's going to, cheat a rest in peace. You know what I mean? So, I think the heat that he's gotten for it is unfortunate because, if it hadn't been on camera, then it would have, and we don't have the audio anyways. Then I don't know how else it would have been described. If it wasn't on camera, would people have said it was more scummy or less scummy? I don't know. So it's interesting. I definitely did see a number of people suggesting though that like it was crazy to them that like this was that Oliver 2 was getting heat for talking about PayPal, but Kent wasn't getting more heat. And I'm like, well, one of these things is distinctly bribery, and the other thing, like the judge ruled in his favor. So I think you have to recognize the difference between bribery and angle shooting, and I think it is angle shooting. But I'm not coming down on crushing him, which could be wrong. I don't know. But it was certainly awkward for everyone involved.
Yeah, and Card Hoarder released a statement saying, that they were, they're not kicking him off the team or anything like that, and they're kind of standing behind him. They don't feel like it was malicious, or cheating or anything like that. So, I mean, it happened, and we're going to move on. It's... I think the unfortunate thing for Kent, whether he was intending to do that or not, I think people are going to kind of look at him a little differently now, and especially people will be kind of paying a little bit more attention when they're playing against them, whether that's warranted or not. But
no, I think that's definitely true. That I guess should be the side effect of that. If that makes sense. I think that's perfectly reasonable. So. The one thing I would suggest, if you are actually frustrated about this and you're a person who goes to SCG, politely talk to the guy. Kent's pretty friendly and approachable, and he'll tell you exactly what happened. You don't have to believe him, but I would suggest in this scenario that the guy makes himself available and puts himself out there and is pretty friendly. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess I get tired of some of the pitchforky stuff, which is all I've seen, and this doesn't seem like a pitchfork thing to me. You know what I mean?
And I think also, I mean, when you're part of a team. You're not just representing yourself. I mean, you're representing, the sponsor that you have for the team or, your teammates.
True.
And I think, we kind of feel the same way. I mean, we're all, you and Morgan, we're all part of this podcast, and we kind of represent the podcast as well as ourselves. And we represent Comic Town. We wear the Comic Town shirts when we go to tournaments. So, I mean, I think there's also that. I mean, it really doesn't make any sense to try to cheat on camera. You know what I mean? Like, exactly. Like you have a lot more to lose than just your reputation. So.
And going back to your point where you said the Card Hoarder wasn't going to do anything about that, I think that says a lot too because we've seen instances as mentioned of where someone does cheat and they're no longer a part of teams. So the teams want to uphold their integrity as well. So I would say that if they also aren't doing this, then
yeah. So. And I do want to make it clear that I don't think he was cheating. So I know we're kind of throwing that around, but we're not saying he was cheating. But
I said yes. I think it's angle shooting. But angle shooting, that's a personal thing for you. Like if you think that's really bad or not. Like if you're playing by the the quote unquote rules, then whatever. I guess
I'll be completely honest. I mean, back when I was in my heyday, I was a little bit more cutthroat than I am now, and I don't know that I would have done something like that, but I'd be a lot more strict on things like missed triggers and stuff like that. Okay. Whereas now I'm a little bit more like laid back, or I'll be like, all right, I'll give you that one, but the next one, you're not going to get away with it.
I had it happen at this, the 8-man PPTQ over the weekend, and it's a situation. I felt really bad afterwards. It was really awkward, but like I stuck to it because it's competitive, and an opponent missed a trigger. And had 3 triggers go off of an Elder Deep Fiend, and I asked him how he was stacking his triggers, and I needed to know because I had Selfless Spirit. That's all I was trying to do, and then I realized after he started searching his library off his Sanctum of Ugin that he never declared any targets for his tapping. So I'm like, I think you missed that trigger, and the judge was watching, and he's like, well, do you want to put it in the sack? I'm like, no. And like the opponent was like, was like frustrated, and I didn't blame him, and I wasn't trying to get the guy. He's like, well, I think you confused me by asking me questions, and I said, I'm not trying to confuse you. I need to know what's going on too. And I wasn't even thinking about that. It wasn't until after I went to look at my Selfless Spirit that I was like, wait, I don't know what's getting tapped. And I'm like, you didn't declare anything, and you've searched your library. And I felt really bad about it. Like I sat there and it was really had a pit in my stomach about it because I don't like doing that. But at competitive level, I've been the person on the other side who's missed something, and I have to deal with it. So I definitely think that there's that part of it. And when you're paying, that was at a PPTQ. You know what I mean? If you're playing in an open where your livelihood is on the line, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I think you're incentivized to, be cutthroat. If that
Yeah,
makes
no,
sense.
absolutely.
So I think on Kent's end, I think if you asked him, and again I'm not going to speak for the guy, but if we went back, he's got to know that what moving in that card looked bad. But at the same time, like if you're the person who played Rest in Peace, and then like your opponent says, "Is that it? Go," and you're like, "Yes," and you don't acknowledge the trigger, then it's your fault too.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely.
So. But we can move on from that. So if we look at the breakdown real quick here, the day 2 metagame breakdown for Modern, we saw that Dredge had 11 copies in day 2, which again, most of that's card hoarder. Burn had a big showing though, a lot of Burn.
Burn's been making a comeback.
Don't call it a comeback. Burn's been here for years.
Literally since 1994 or whatever.
Whatever lightning bolt, And then you have Infect, which honestly, we don't even see Infect in the top 8, which is real refreshing. Let's just be honest. It is in 10th place, but that's why I like Modern. People talk about the doom and gloom and how Infect's the best deck, and a whole team decides to play Dredge instead, and everyone shuts out Infect out of the top 8, and that makes me happy. So. And then you have Affinity, Bant Eldrazi. So you see Bant Eldrazi, again, was also the de facto best deck a couple months ago. You know what I mean? Like, a month and a half ago. 3 copies in day 2.
Well, even Jund, Jund has been, for so long, Jund has been maybe not the best possible deck, but usually it's one of the top decks. Like if you look at day 2 metagame, it's usually one of the top 2 or 3. And there's only 3 of them in the day 2. So I think part of that is, if Dredge and Burn were the big decks, then Jund's not so great against them. So,
That's true.
but yeah.
But yeah, so interesting to see that, look, Modern has a self-correcting metagame. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. What a terrible format. All right. All right, Dave, I think you wanted to talk about something that we did over this last weekend a little bit, so go for it.
Yeah, so we mentioned at the end of the last episode that we were doing the Cube Invitational, so that happened last weekend. So was able to get, we had 18 people for that, which was the biggest one that we've had. So this was the 7th annual. Yeah, usually they've been around 14 to 16. So we actually got 18, which was pretty cool. So I just want to throw out a congrats to Eric Rose, who was our winner, and also to our runner-up, Connor Garino. And both of these guys really hadn't drafted my cube that often, maybe once or twice, and then they just show up and bash everybody. So I don't know what happened there, but it was a good time.
Yeah, it certainly was fun.
Now you and I both. Now we do a cut to top 6. So the way that the playoff works, it's almost like if you're familiar with the NFL playoff. So the top 2 seeds get a bye. That's how we did the top cut for this tournament, and Mike and I both made top cut, but didn't quite get there.
Couldn't go for the third.
Yeah,
I got in the top 6, and that was the most I could hope for. But I didn't really play a match of Magic in the top 6. I got land screwed one of the games, and my next game my opponent had no cards in hand, and then ripped Locks on a Warhammer, and I had no way to interact with it. So, womp womp. But
I drafted the worst deck of all time, and somehow I still won a match.
just won a match.
I basically, without going into the specifics of it, I was basically going mono red, and then realized about halfway through the draft that I might not have enough cards.
There were 3 red drafters in the top 6, so
Yeah.
I was red black with the sacrifice deck.
Yeah.
And then the eventual winner was Jund. So
Yeah. So I ended up kind of 2/3 of a mono red deck, and then I just had to throw some random white cards in there because that's all I had. With no fixing. It was real bad.
yeah.
I made an unfortunate block that cost me a match.
Dave lost to Become Immense off the top. I want you to know
Was it
that
off the
happened.
top?
Oh yeah, he had no cards in hand.
Oh my god!
Become Immense off the top. It is the best ever. I've watched him do that in 2 tournaments in a row now. Oh man, that's gonna be he's gonna carry around a Become Immense in his wallet like Chris Bakula. That's what he's gonna do.
So I probably haven't. I haven't lost to the most Become Immenses, but it doesn't make it any less heartbreaking. Anyway.
Yeah, fair enough.
But it was a good time. We'll make some tweaks to the tournament for next year. We had some awkward numbers for Rochester draft, which really is at its best when you have an 8-person pod, and we kind of had 9-player pods for Rochester. So we'll make some adjustments for next year, and we'll run it back.
Yeah. So. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it. This is kind of a marathon session, but we made good time. So I don't know if that says maybe we're less interesting, or maybe we just lost a half hour of Morgan talking. Maybe that's all it is. And that's I'm sorry, everybody. You should feel the loss because a half hour of Morgan talking it's good content. So, but that's all right. Well, let's go to our wrap up. So, if you are the kind of person who is so inclined, this is Eternal Weekend, and it's in Columbus this year. So, at the convention center, they actually had events. We're recording this Thursday, a little late this week. So, they had events today, and if this goes up tomorrow, that's actually Vintage Champs. Saturday's Legacy Champs, and then both top 8s will be on Sunday. But there's also a ton of vendors and a ton of side events. So if this is something that excites you, head on down. Go see the party. You can also go see the cool. They have trophies and they have like oversized alternate art. There's a Mox Sapphire and a Badlands are the two they're giving away, and those are always cool to see.
Yeah, go check it out. I mean, even if you don't play any of the Eternal formats, they have plenty of side events. So pretty much any any format you want to play, they have side event for it. And if you're not local to Columbus or aren't in the area, then they should have streaming coverage for
Card Titan.
Card Titan, yeah, which they've been running it every year. So I think Ruben Bressler is doing commentary with Kevin Jones.
Not. Because I think he's doing Run It Up Reno coverage right now for poker.
Oh, okay.
So
well,
I'm
I know.
Not sure. I'm on the website. I don't know.
I thought it was him and Kevin Jones.
I could be wrong, I guess, but
I could also be wrong.
I don't know.
In any case, they'll have streaming coverage of the events. So yeah, if you're not local and want to see some, we don't get too many vintage, vintage coverage events. So I'm kind of interested to watch that, even though I don't play vintage like at all.
So then, additionally, there's a modern IQ happening. Now, this comes directly from Aaron Hammer, the new, freshly minted L2 judge in the Columbus area. So congrats to him. Aaron is the one who does some sweet tokens. He's done some for the Comic Town pre-releases, such as an Eldrazi Scion that was an actual Scion. And he also did our Thopter tokens, which are Yonoids. The Noid from that you must avoid from Pizza Hut, and they are awesome, and I love using them. So
Domino's, man, Domino's. Come on.
What did I say? Pizza Hut?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Domino's. You're right. I even have the video game on the the NES. It's so good.
It's disappointing, man.
But anyways, so they are having a standard format IQ on Sunday, October 30th, and this is at Maxine's Bargain Box in Newark, Ohio. So if you are in the area and you're looking to play some standard, go out and check that. And I think it is standard because I think you put modern down in here, Dave. Unless I'm crazy. All right. Anyways, it is standard. It's a standard format IQ. So head on out there.
Okay. You told me it was modern.
I definitely said standard twice, actually.
Okay.
But that's okay.
My bad.
And then don't forget, we also have a standard PBTQ that's happening. Again, we already mentioned this on the 5th of November at Comic Town. Again, with the great $1,000 in store credit prizes. So go out there. You don't have to worry about playing against me. I'm not allowed to play in it, so there you go. I literally already had 2 people ask to borrow decks. They're like, I know you can't play in this. Can I borrow a deck? I'm like, the Vultures, man. Coming out of the woodwork.
I probably won't be playing in that because my son may be born on that day, so probably not going to be playing Magic, unfortunately, but I wish I were there.
Yeah, Dave's got to start a new nation, got to meet his son.
Yeah. My wife would probably kill me if I tried to go.
Actual murder. Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be gruesome.
Just saying.
And Morgan and I would stand over and just be like, he got what he deserved. So.
He died doing what he loves.
Oh wow, that's touchy. Oh man. So yeah, you've heard stories like Magic players who like go to an event but then have to leave if their wife goes into labor. Dave's not chancing it. It's not worth it. The pain.
We'll just say with my first child, I played in like an F&M or something like that the night before she was born, and I'm never going to hear the end of that. So it's really not worth it.
Yeah.
So anybody out there, if you have a significant other that is close to having a child, just do yourself a favor. Just take a few weeks off of Magic. It's fine.
That's been Dave's tip corner.
That's Dave's pro tip.
That's actually the best. But that's going to do it for us. So we're going to wrap it up here. I'll try to give the same rundown that Morgan gives. So you can find us in a number of great places. We're on iTunes, and we're also on MTG Cast, where you can find a number of other great podcasts as well, including things like Monday Night Magic. So please take a listen there. You can find us on Facebook, just at your end step on Facebook.
And on Facebook, I think we're going to try to do some Facebook Live
Yes.
things. So we're going to try to incorporate that a little bit more.
Yeah, I did one on Morgan's wedding, but I did it on my personal page, not the actual. So we messed that up. But we're gonna keep trying it.
Yeah. So if you don't follow us on Facebook, definitely go ahead and do that so that you'll get updates for when we go live. And we don't know what kind of content that'll be, but we'll try to work some stuff in.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we're also at your end step on Twitter. That's an @ symbol your end step, because Morgan got the coolest Twitter handle ever. So please follow us. Also give us a review on iTunes. That would be very helpful. Spread the word. We've been passing out stickers, and it's been happy to see those more and more. So they've been a lot more effective than like the business cards, which is nice. So if you want a sticker, let us know. We still got a bunch of those. But otherwise, I think that's going to do it for us. So as Morgan would say, have a good one. Bye.